"Elvis, honey, you need to wake up now," Linda said gently, shaking his shoulder. Elvis groaned and rolled over, struggling to open his eyes. The bright morning sun streamed in through the curtains of the Vegas hotel suite. "Mommy?" he mumbled, his speech slurred. "I had a dream last night." If she hadn't yanked him out in time, she shuddered at the thought. "What did you dream, baby?" she asked patiently, knowing it would take him a long time to get the words out in his heavily drugged state. "You let me be born, but in the process, you died saving me." A chill ran through Linda's body at his haunting words. She tried to reassure him it was only a dream, that he had stopped breathing last night, but she and Dr. Nick had revived him. But Elvis didn't want to discuss that. He was fixated on the notion that Linda was his twin who sacrificed herself for him. She looked at his puffy, pallid face, the dark circles under his once vibrant blue eyes. How had it come to this? Her beloved falling apart before her eyes, retreating further into a haze of pills and delusions. Dr. Nick warned her Elvis's condition was grave, his body bloated with fluid retention, his liver damaged from the toxic cocktail of medications he consumed. The gastroenterologist Dr. Nick brought and found Elvis's colon packed with impacted waste, his intestines distended and barely functioning from the opiates. But Elvis didn't want to hear it, refusing the addiction specialist's recommendation of a new treatment and instead demanding more and more pills to get through the punishing schedule of 2 Vegas shows a night. Linda slept on a cot in his room, rising in the night to make sure he was still breathing. Some nights they would just sit and watch TV static after the station signed off, or blankly stare at the closed-circuit shots of newborns in the hospital nursery. They used to talk about having a child of their own someday, a little boy with Elvis's smile and Linda's gentle nature. They even picked out a name, John Barron Presley. But now, seeing him like this, Linda knew it could never be. How could she bring an innocent baby into this chaos? Elvis confessed his hang-ups about sex and childbirth, saying the idea of a baby coming through there made the female anatomy seem like an unsavory place. Linda found his views odd and disturbing. The man who oozed raw sexuality on stage was repulsed by the natural processes of womanhood and procreation. She was just 22 when they met, a virginal beauty queen dazzled by Elvis's charm and talent. He told her he wanted to spend the rest of his life with her within 2 weeks of their first date. Their early months were a euphoric haze of marathon lovemaking sessions, midnight rides on his motorcycle, and dreamy talk of marriage and babies. But the bliss didn't last. As Elvis's addiction spiraled out of control, his behavior turned more erratic and dangerous. He shot holes in the ceiling of his Vegas suite, narrowly missed Linda's head while trying to pick off a porcelain owl, and fired randomly around the room when he couldn't find Dr. Gainham to give him his nightly fix. Linda learned to dance around his moods, stroking his ego 1 minute, saving his life the next. She still loved him deeply, but more as a broken little boy than a man, a Peter Pan forever stunted by the loss of his beloved mother. She mothered him now more than anything, cutting up his food, wiping his face, changing sweat-soaked sheets, and injecting him with the Demerol he demanded. The intimacy between them faded as he sank deeper into drug-fueled infantilism, playing games where Linda pretended to be his baby, even wearing matching hospital gowns. As Elvis slept, Linda wandered through the suite, tidying the detritus of half-eaten room service trays and pill bottles. On the coffee table, she found a copy of Khalil Gibran's The Prophet, one of Elvis's favorite books of spiritual poetry. A piece of notepaper marked a page. Linda opened it and read, "Love one another, but make not a bond of love. Let it rather be a moving sea between the shores of your souls. Fill each other's cup, but drink not from one cup. Give one another of your bread, but eat not from the same loaf. Sing and dance together and be joyous, but let each one of you be alone, even as the strings of a lute are alone though they quiver with the same music." Tears filled Linda's eyes. This passage spoke to what she yearned for, a love that uplifted and celebrated the spirit, not drowned it in drugs and dysfunction. At that moment, she knew she had to leave, not because she no longer loved Elvis with all her heart, but because staying meant dying with him, smothering herself to save the shell of a man he had become. She had to save herself to find her own music. Just then, the phone rang, startling Linda from her epiphany. She picked up, expecting it to be Marty or Jerry or one of the other guys with the daily check-in and schedule. But a woman's voice, tinged with a refined British accent, came over the line. "Hello, is this Elvis's suite? This is Sheila Ryan. May I please speak with him?" Sheila, the perky 23-year-old model Elvis had grown infatuated with. The virginal Catholic girl who reminded him of a young Priscilla with her gamine looks and naive charm. Linda felt a stab of jealousy even though she had resolved to leave. Old habits died hard. "I'm sorry, Sheila. Elvis is sleeping right now. Let me take a message and I'll have him call you back," Linda said coolly. As much as she wanted to scream at the innocent girl to run far away from Elvis and never look back, she couldn't bring herself to shatter Sheila's romantic illusions. She would learn soon enough. After taking the message, Linda quietly packed a small suitcase, scribbled a note, and placed it on the pillow next to Elvis's slack, drooling face. "I'll love you always, but I have to save myself now. Be well, my darling." She pressed a soft kiss to his forehead and slipped out of the suite, silently closing the door on the only man she ever loved. Elvis awoke hours later, groggy and disoriented. He fumbled for Linda, finding only cool, empty sheets and the note, his name written on it in her familiar loopy scrawl. As he read it once, twice, 3 times, her words slowly penetrated his foggy brain. Linda, his soulmate, his savior, had left him. "No, no, no," he muttered, crumpling the note in his shaking hand. This couldn't be happening. Not now, when he needed her more than ever. He staggered to his feet, steadying himself on the nightstand. He had to find her, to beg her to come back, to promise her he would change. He opened the door to the suite and nearly knocked over the room service waiter coming to deliver his dinner. "I'm sorry, Mr. Presley. I'll come back later," the startled young man said, taking in Elvis's wild-eyed, disheveled appearance. "Have you seen her? Linda, did you see her leave?" Elvis demanded, gripping the boy's arm. "And no, sir. I haven't seen Miss Thompson since this morning. Is everything all right? Can I get you something?" Elvis released him, his shoulders slumping in defeat. "No, I'm fine. Just leave the tray. And if you see her—" "Of course, sir. I'll let her know you're looking for her. Here, let me set this up for you." The waiter carefully arranged the covered plates on the table, lit the warming candles, and quietly backed out of the room. Elvis ignored the food, his stomach roiling with nausea and panic. He had to pull himself together. Linda couldn't have gotten far. He picked up the phone and dialed the airline to book a seat on the next flight to Memphis. She always retreated to Graceland when she needed to think. He would find her there and make this right. But as he waited for the booking agent to secure his reservation, his eyes fell upon the cocktail napkin where Linda had jotted down Sheila's message. Sweet, uncomplicated, worshipful Sheila, the anti-Linda, a girl who would never challenge him to be better, to rise above his demons. A girl who would let him be the baby, forever and always. He hesitated, his finger hovering over the buttons. Then slowly, deliberately, he dialed the number Sheila had left, his mouth curling into a rueful smile as she breathlessly answered on the first ring. "Sheila, baby, see, I've been thinking about you all day. What do you say we blow this town and fly to Palm Springs for a few days, just you and me? Linda's visiting family, and I'm all alone." As Elvis listened to Sheila's delighted reply, he pushed down the gnawing ache in his chest, the little voice whispering that he was making a terrible mistake. He couldn't face the hard truths Linda wanted him to confront. He didn't have the strength to fight his way back to the man he used to be, the man she fell in love with. It was easier to lose himself in the adulation of a starry-eyed girl, to play out the myth of the king reveling in the last of his fading glory, even if it meant destroying the best part of himself in the process. Even if it meant losing the only woman who ever truly saw him, broken and flawed and struggling, and still loved him not as an idol to be worshipped but a man to be saved. As Elvis boarded the plane with Sheila on his arm, laughing and popping pills and waving to the screaming fans, he tried to ignore the hollow feeling in his gut, the sense that he was hurtling towards a dark, inescapable fate. Maybe, he thought, as the drugs kicked in and Sheila fell asleep on his shoulder, this was all he deserved in the end. to burn out in a blaze of excess and self-destruction, the price of flying too close to the sun on wax wings of fame and fortune. He closed his eyes and let the white noise of the jet engines drown out the doubts, the yearning for a different path. When he opened them again, Linda's face swam before him, luminous and lovely, the angel of the better man he might have been. "I'm sorry," he whispered, as her image dissolved into the clouds. "I loved you the best way I knew how. Forgive me." And with that, Elvis surrendered to the velvet void, letting it carry him away from the painful truth of all he had squandered and lost. In his dreams, he was forever the golden boy, young and beautiful and full of promise, with a lifetime of second chances stretching out before him as endlessly as the desert horizon. If only, if only.